Okay, welcome to part 4, the final part of this walkthrough. So what you see on the screen in front of you right now is basically a downloaded version of part 2. So you can go ahead and go back to the part 2 video and download that PKT file to follow along. You might notice that the immediate difference between that file and what I have currently on the screen is that I've deleted all these port and device address labels, and that's because somebody asked me, hey, how do you go about deciding how to assign addresses to devices and ports? So that's what I'm kind of going to try to walk through. One thing I'm going to go ahead and throw at you right now, though, is that I'm going to make another difference to the topology, because the one that was given to us in that recent email from Professor in hopes for preparing for the final was this topology. So it's a very similar topology, except there's an extra wire going down that diagonal. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, and let's give it faster Ethernet 02 on R4 and 03 on R2. Yeah, that label is kind of getting scrunched up. I can't move these labels around, but let's assume that subnet 5 still relates to this diagonal, and that subnet 10 is this new diagonal that we just put in right here. So subnet 10, it's this one, is going to be 192.168.10.024. Again, you don't need to put the subnet mask, but when things get tricky with the numbers, it's really convenient to have it there right in front of you. Since we're dealing with pretty easy numbers, it should be fine. Okay, now for labeling. So when it comes to labeling, you're hopefully given these subnets, and from there you can go ahead and give out the addresses. Otherwise, coming up with the subnets can be challenging, as you guys have seen in the midterm. So figuring out the subnets is something I won't cover in this walkthrough, but hopefully you're given these subnet numbers for the exam. And once you're given those subnet numbers or subnet IDs and their relative masks, subnet masks, then you can go and start giving out addresses. I don't know if I can draw. Yeah, I can draw. No, that's a line. I want to undo that real quick. I want to undo that. I wanted to draw a box, hopefully. Can I draw a box? Yes, I can draw a box. So like this right here is the appropriate subnet for subnet 6. And within this box, all the addresses for subnet 6 must be present. And the first address must always go to the default gateway. And in this case, the default gateway is the FA02 port of R1, because this is the port that will lead us out of the subnet 6 network and into other networks in the larger topology. So that is why the first address must go to FA02, which is 192.168.6.1. So it's basically the subnet ID, but only one after that. So that's going to be your default gateway. Give it a 32-bit subnet mask, and you're done. That is your first address. Nice and easy. The second address can easily go to the only device in that network, which is PC1. So that is not a challenging task. You just give it that number, and yeah, there you go, your two addresses for your subnet. And this process can be easily repeated across many of these, because several of these subnets within this network are structured the same way, where they have a single default gateway. So let's just go ahead and finish those real quick. That should be really easy. So 192.168.9.124. I encourage you to totally like download the part 2 PKT file, delete all labels, and write all labels by yourself, because it's much more gratifying and, I don't know, fun, I guess, to do stuff instead of just following along. So go ahead and try that. And then again, the second address in the network goes to the device. Okay, that's not too bad. I didn't draw a rectangle this time, but I hope that's not necessary, because you can totally see that these are the only 2 points of addressing within the subnet. And actually, you know what? It doesn't look nice now that I have only one Can I start drawing rectangles over here? Let's go and draw all of our rectangles right now then, so that we can get that right over with. So that's one rectangle, another rectangle over here. This one is going to be between these two right here. This one's going to be these two right here. You're starting to, ooh, so here's a tricky one though. I don't know how to draw this one. I got to probably draw it with a circle. Can I draw it with a circle? I don't want to draw it like that though. Let's not do that. Can I delete that and then delete that? I would rather draw a shape of some sort, so okay. Yeah, it's a disgusting looking shape, but shape nonetheless. Okay, that is very disgusting. I would rather not have that, but for now let's leave it because hey, it's okay. It's just a drawing. Okay, so more or less all of our subnets have been, oh, I'm missing one down here. Okay. So all of our subnets have been rectangularized and compartmentalized. I have finished 2 of them for labeling. Let's go and finish the other 2, which are super easy. Don't draw. Go into, yeah, see, that's what happens when I accidentally draw. Gotta click the delete button, hit the delete. Okay. So yes, as usual, default gateway gets the first address, so it's 192.168.8.132. Perfect, and then the device gets the next one. 192. Now, if you had multiple devices in a single subnet, then it would not matter which device gets which address. Normally, addresses like for devices in a network don't matter, unless if you have some kind of other convention or set of rules that you're employing for device IP addressing. But the first address must always go to the default gateway. Remember that. As long as you get that part right, you can mess up the addresses of the device in the network however you like. The default gateway has to be correct. Just to make sure that, oh, I forgot to mention, in the part 2 PKT, I did mess up on the IP configuration of PC1. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick. I remember that I had 198 over here instead of 192. So let's go ahead and change that to 2. That way we don't encounter problems with that later down the line. Let's go ahead and also add in our 7th subnet right here. Give this guy the default gateway. Yep. And then let's also give this guy our second address. Perfect. Now here comes the tricky part. Now we're in a situation where the rest of the subnets we're working with have 2 viable default gateways. So like let's look at subnet 4 for example. Subnet 4 could easily take G01 of R1 or F02 of R4 as the default gateway. Both would be totally okay. In fact, I don't even remember how I had it before I deleted these labels. There's probably one or the other, but you can assign either one the default gateway and you'll be totally fine, because whenever traffic is exchanged between these 2 port devices, these ports of these 2 devices, then the default gateway will always happen to be R4, and R4 will decide how to route it out. And if R4 does know the networks that are outside the subnet, then any traffic in this subnet could travel to anywhere else outside the subnet. So you should be totally fine. You could totally flip a coin, choose randomly, or choose in a specific way you like. It doesn't matter. So for that reasoning, I'm just going to give some random numbers. Sorry, not random numbers. I'm going to randomly choose which one to assign the default gateway. In this case, I'm going to go with this one. So actually, I want to make it systematic. That way it's easier for me when I'm typing. Let me give it to R4 for all its subnets. So let's do that. Let's give R4 192.168.4.1/32. So I gave R4 this default gateway. I'm also going to give it this default gateway right here. I'm just going to give it all the default gateways that I can. That way certain devices get to prioritize having the ones. That way I'm typing less ones and zeros differently in different places. This is subnet 10, so there's going to be 168.10.1/32. Okay. And then, okay, this is a bit crooked, but that's totally fine. 192.168.3.132. Perfect. Yeah, so these other ports are basically decided because now that we've given these guys the default gateway, all of the default gateways to R4, these guys have to be the other address, so 192.168.4.2. I believe you could totally give this guy an address like 22 or 23, whatever you wanted, because as long as it's within the subnet range and it is not the default gateway, it's totally valid to give it anything else. But since I like to just keep things simple, I stick with 2. You could not, I don't think you could give something like 257 because the limit caps at 255 for 8 bits. And yeah, so 2 is what I'm going to give the third one for that. Let's give this guy 192.168.10.2/32. It's getting, okay, I'm actually getting really distracted by these circles, but I'll delete them. I will delete them now, I'm sorry. I'm so indecisive sometimes. Delete. Yep. Just very grotesque. Let's give this guy our other address, 192.168.3.232. Okay, perfect. And what do we have left here now? So R4 took as many default gateways as could. Let's also give R2 as many default gateways as we can, because I like to keep my default gateways on one device if possible, or restrict them to as few devices as possible. That way I'm typing the ones as few times as possible. So let's give R2 right here this default gateway for subnet 1. So 192.168.1.1. Okay. R2 cannot have this default gateway, however, for subnet 10 because it's already given to that one. So this port is already decided. Let's give it this one right here then. This one is subnet 2, 192.168.2.1/32. Okay, so I think we're almost done. We got a couple left. Let's just start wrapping it up. 192.1.2.32. Yep, we're getting there. Okay. Oh, there's this one right here, FA0. It's so easy to miss. This one right here, 192. Oh, that's interesting. So neither of these are assigned a default gateway. Let's just go ahead and give it to FR1 then. 192.168.5.132. And then we have to give another address to this guy. So let's give it 192.168. Oh, damn. I just realized that this totally doesn't work.